It was
like a seg.
Like a seg, yeah. So, and I'm in there 24 hours. So he said I'm gonna let you out on the pod inside of the county jail with the adults, but you're gonna have your own separate room. I'm gonna have my sheriffs watch you. So I was like, okay. I just wanted to come up out of that seg that I was in. So that's where I stayed and maintained and went to trial with another public defender. I stayed there in the county jail. I turned 17 there as well. By the time I turned 17, I went through my trial, been found guilty by a jury, and sentenced by a judge to natural life in prison without the possibility of parole. So I entered the Michigan Department of Corrections in 1988 at the age of 17.
Do you remember what evidence the prosecution had to give to the jury? Like, what did they convict you on specifically?
So the prosecutor just proved the gun that was used to kill the innocent bystander was my gun and had my print on it. And he used witnesses' testimony to say that I was at the scene of the crime. They seen me shooting. They stood next to me while I was shooting.
How many other people around you were shooting at the same time?
We had 3 other people shooting.
Was anybody else murdered, or was he the only person?
No, he was the only person.
Did his family come to your trial?
So the family members did come to the trial. The mother and I think brothers, maybe. I went to the Michigan Department of Corrections, and it was a reformatory for boys from the ages of 16 to about maybe 21. But they had guys in there in their 30s. What they were saying, that's what it was. That really wasn't what it was. So we had adults with us. So there, I was able to start doing the time I was sentenced to.
So you entered the Michigan Department of Corrections at the age of 17 in 1988.
Yes.
And how were your first couple years there? How was your transition and your experience as you started your life sentence?
So entering the Michigan Department of Corrections at that young age, you are like open prey because you have older, at that particular prison I was at, you do have older men there. And so they're there for the reasons of preying upon you, take advantage of you. A lot of rapes occur. And so you have all of these elements that's taking place. For me, it reminded me of the same elements where I had just left, which was the streets. It's not a good thing to say that using your street mentality and your street attitude while you're in prison is a good thing to do. It's just what, at that time, what helped me to navigate. So I didn't experience what a lot of other of my younger peers experienced, which is rapes, being raped, them committing suicide, or them going to lock up and, to receive protection. A lot of them was embezzled. Just a whole list of things that would just, take...
A multitude of ways to be victimized.
Yeah, most definitely. So as a result of that, I just used my mentality I had, to navigate. I didn't experience it, but I became a part of that problem because I thought like in being in the streets, this is the only way to survive. So I got into a lot of fights. I ended up, I stabbed a lot of people. I ended up going in and out of segregation. By like my first 5 years in prison, this was my attitude. So I've been to the higher custody levels, level 5. At a level 5, you lock down 24 hours a day. And the only time you are let out is probably 20, 25 minutes to go attend yard 3 times out of the week. And 3 times out of the week, you're allowed to go take a shower for about 10 minutes. Being in there and being young, again, being locked up, the attitude is, this is life. This is what comes with it. As a result of that, I end up saying after the first 5 years, enough is enough. I want to learn how to think on my own. I want to learn how to, have more control of myself and my life, during time. So I started in one day, my last day of being in administrative segregation. I said, this is it. I'm going to start doing something, which led me to get involved in programs that was being offered by the prison. So one day I chose to go to one of them. And out of all of the programs that I was attending, there was one in particular that stood out. And that one it was another prisoner teaching the program. Had the same uniform on as me. I see this guy in the child hall on the yard, walking down, the prison yard. And so he's teaching the program and I couldn't understand it. And so later I went and talked to the guy. I asked him why he was doing it. Come to find out he was doing the natural life sentence, much, much older guy.
Because you're in your early 20s at this point, right?
Yes. And so the guy told me, he was like, listen, I'm doing this for young guys like y'all, who gonna get out. And y'all need to be able to understand not to come back to prison. This is not a place where you should be. And I'm like, you ain't never getting out. You know what I'm saying? So in saying that, saying like, why are you doing this beyond what you saying though?
Like really, what are you getting from it?
Mm-hmm. And so he, again, stood on the same thing he had told me. And so as a result of that, I was just inspired.
It was like he could see something in the future that you couldn't see.
Yeah.
Because he was pretty confident that some of you guys were going to get out, some of you juvenile lifers.
Yeah, absolutely. And, for like that year, 16 and a half more years, so about 17 years, I just went on this journey through self-help, self-motivational efforts to try to help myself, change my attitude, change my character, change my conduct. So I got involved in every program I could that any prison that was offered. Some did offer more, some offered less, some offered none. And through correspondence courses, I was allowed to develop myself from learning from that elderly guy how to do programs. I learned how to, as a result, develop programs, facilitate them. At certain prisons where young guys was at, I worked with them through programs that I developed. So I had like a 17 and a half year just clean prison record. Prior to the Miller versus Alabama case that came down by the United States Supreme Court of Florida versus Graham was even a conversation or even being argued. I was looking for change. And the reason why I was so motivated is because I wanted to, while in prison, I wanted to be able to do the same thing that older guy was doing for all of us. I just wanted to do it for the young guys. And I wanted to show them, like, listen, these are all the things that I was able to accomplish and achieve while in prison doing a natural life sentence. All the certificates, all these achievements, just show this is what you're capable of achieving, of attaining, even though you locked up. If you're willing to change your life. But to give somebody young purpose and to give them the love or affection they missing is a lot.
And to just give them all the things that you didn't get, but you needed.
Mm-hmm. And that love and affection comes from just spending time saying I care. You know what I'm saying?
And wanting to care.
And wanting to care.
Yeah.
And when they see you genuine and you genuinely care about them, they'll listen. So.
Was there a music program?
I did a program with young people called Music Therapy. The program consisted of the young guys in attendance. We all sit in a circle. We would listen to a rap artist, their favorite rap artist. And they all get to rapping and singing and dancing and stuff like that. After it's over with, I would ask them, tell me, what's real, what you heard. And they go to relating to, this is what's going on in my neighborhood and this, that, and the other. And, and so I would get to teach them about, what's reality, what's entertainment, what's fantasy. Teach them, about the value, like that this artist or entertainer does not act like this inside of this actual home. In fact, he doesn't even live in the same environment and neighborhood, so just teaching those things,
Separating fantasy from reality.
Yeah.
I found an article about that, I think from 2009. Does that sound about right?
Mm-hmm. In 2012, the Supreme Court banned mandatory juvenile life without parole sentences in their decision in the case of Miller versus Alabama. Then in 2016, their decision in Montgomery versus Louisiana led to the retroactive application of that ruling.
So that brings us right up to the early 2000s. All this national level litigation is going on that's going to start to change retroactively even juvenile life sentences. So what was going on in your life when you started to hear about these rumblings?
I was attending our law library, and of course you run across the cases. In the law library, you tend to, talk about the legalities of what's going on. When you hear that, you go research it. So I researched it and shared the like-mindedness, other guys that was affected behind what the language of this law was talking about. We would just share information. You hear something, I hear something, I'll let you know. It didn't really have any strong implications until, like I said, when Miller versus Alabama came down and the conversation on how it should be applied. The argument began to surround the courts answering those who are the actual ones who committed the crime. It was the argument around retroactivity, how that has to be applied. All these complications came as states would challenge the higher courts on the Eighth Amendment on cruel and unusual punishment. But with the state exercising the sovereignty, it was also because the political climate in which so many politicians had supported the ideology of children are monsters.
Is this where LaBelle comes in?
No. So LaBelle had been a strong advocate, a civil rights attorney prior to us hearing about Miller versus Alabama case, where she was arguing just within the state of Michigan.
Attorney Deborah LaBelle has actually been working on and filing federal lawsuits against the Michigan Department of Corrections since 1985 and is one of the country's leading inmate advocates. She won over $140 million in 2009 on behalf of female inmates in the state of Michigan who had been sexually assaulted by corrections officers. In 2013, when Michigan was ordered by a federal judge to provide over 350 juvenile lifers with parole hearings, including Antonio, Deborah LaBelle was lead counsel.
She had been trying to galvanize information from those of us who was doing the actual sentence to be able to develop an argument around it to present to the courts. That's how she came in, and she got the attention of Michigan's ACLU. They came on board, supported it, and supported her efforts. She eventually took the Michigan Department of Corrections to court under a federal lawsuit.
How did it come about that your case was going to come up for review?
Deborah LaBelle had talked to attorneys that were in the private sector and asked them what their thoughts would be around doing work pro bono. Deborah LaBelle, who had knew about the 300 plus juveniles in Michigan, who she had done work for, corresponded with, and fought for, thought that the 300 and plus should be represented by someone in private counsel who could afford a real defense, unlike what 80 to 90% of us had received, which was, public defenders. So my case was chosen by 3 different attorneys who took my case. So I had a real representation, a defense of what that would look like.
Did you have an appeal?
Mm-hmm. So they filed what is called a motion for relief from judgment in Michigan. A motion for relief from judgment basically is an appeal asking the judge to relieve such judgment prior sentence, whatever I was sentenced to, based upon this. Based upon what? Well, based upon the United States Supreme Court of America just coming down with their decision on criminal Eighth Amendment. And so now the court has to, and the prosecutor also receives a copy of it. Now both have to come together to address it. And the